Hi. As we approach November 29th, the day when the government will come out with the second quarter GDP numbers, there is an unusual buzz around the event because of the severe economic downturn. To explain the issue, we have with us ET's Saubhik Chakrabarti. Hi Saubhik.
Hi.
How bad does it look right now in terms of the numbers that are going to
See,
come?
I'm not going to second guess data. I have absolutely no one has, in fact. So, we have reported that there is a consensus among some economists that it could come down below 5%, which is definitely going to be psychologically a bad news. Whether it will just about be 5%, I don't know.
Okay.
Right. But on the other hand, materially there's not a hell of a lot of difference between, let's say, 5%, apart from the psychological thing, a 5% growth and a 4.85% growth in terms of where the economy is right now. So I think the market, not just the stock market, maybe the wider market of opinion makers, analysts, newspapers, we have all discounted the fact that a set of bad numbers are coming.
Okay. So most of the policymakers, the experts, the economists have attributed the present slowdown to a crisis in demand. So can we call it a demand-driven slowdown, or are there other factors behind?
Before I get to that, actually, I want to make a point,
Yeah.
which is often forgotten when people look at these data sets. See, the data that comes out, every data, in this case GDP, is data of the past, naturally, because it takes time to process. So remember, this is the second quarter GDP that is going to come out. Second quarter GDP has already finished, right? We are in the third quarter of FY20, right? The key number in the near future for Indian economy, I would argue, is not the second quarter GDP, which I think was going to be bad, is whether there are good signs of if not a complete, but bits and pieces, there are hopeful signs of a turnaround in the third quarter.
Okay.
Which is the quarter we are right now. We are in the third quarter, right?
Okay.
That's your October, November, December quarter.
Okay.
Right. This is your July, August, September quarter data that is coming up on November 29th. It is the third quarter GDP that will really tell us. That's the key.
So essentially, what you're saying is that most of the analysts had already factored in.
Yeah, this has been after the first quarter GDP, and looking at government data, looking at market data, looking at all surveys and all that. It was, you would have had to be sort of living in isolation to not think that the second quarter would be bad.
You believe that things are looking up for the third quarter?
Well, what I believe, I don't know whether I should believe anything, but two, three things. I think one should always be optimistic. Two, three things. One is Diwali sales were not as bad as everyone, including us, thought would be. Not brilliant, but not as bad. Second, we don't know the full impact on consumption of the government's huge drive to give out small ticket loans.
Yes,
right?
The loan winners.
So there was a government data, if I remember correctly, something like 80,000 crores were disbursed. Maybe more have been added, right? So we don't know. So that hasn't, the data of that hasn't played out.
So that will be captured in the third quarter.
Some hopefully. So I'm saying, so there are interesting things to see if you're looking for what is almost like.
So the data sets which will come out for the third quarter will be
beginning with GDP. That will actually, because if the third quarter is really bad as the first and second, I think we should be terrified. Right now, even if second quarter says 4.7, I would not be terrified.
Okay. Because that had already been factored in.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter whether it's 4.7 or 4.8.
Yeah, third quarter is around the same, then it's that's three quarters.
And how do you see the investments picking up, especially after the corporate tax cut? because many are actually, even the second quarter corporate earnings.
Simply, I was paying 15 rupees tax. Now I'm paying 8 rupees tax or 11
So what with
rupees
the
tax.
what with the excess cash which they will be saving, whether they will reinvest that in the economy or
see whether they'll reinvest. There are several things here. Number one, many companies would like to shore up their books, right? The numbers on the books have not been very healthy. Some of them actually, contrary to again what is generally believed, some of the big companies already had some amounts of cash reserves. The primary reason for lack of investment is, of course, that lack of demand.
yes.
So corporate tax cuts by themselves, again, I could be wrong, and I'll be delighted to be wrong, whether by themselves that will spur investment. I think it's a medium term. Answer is in the medium term, let's say 3-4 quarters, we'll have to see. But as of now, there doesn't seem to be an incredible amount of evidence that any investment activity is picking up because of the corporate tax cut. That said, it was a very good decision.
Right. So
because I'll just elaborate on that.
Yeah.
A very good decision for two things. One, of course, it kind of changed the narrative a bit for India Inc. For the investors, right? It made them feel better. And the manufacturing, the special new manufacturing tax cut,
yes,
if that is followed up with policy which gets you land and fixes some of the issues in the labor market, the factor market issues, that can be a huge thing, potentially. But these are all 3-4 quarters. I don't know.
But with this, you are saying that the government has actually shown intent that.
Of course, and it was a fairly, given how this government has looked at taxes, and in fact any government, it was by Indian standards a fairly radical.
Along with the other steps.
Of course, and correcting their own mistakes.
Yeah. Right. So, in addition to what has already been announced by the government so far, do you see, other measures being taken in the short term?
There's a hell of a lot of chatter in income tax. I have not the foggiest notion whether the government will or will not cut income tax. I have no.
But based on the present indicators,
but I can only say what I can. Trying to think through the question, I'll say that number one, I don't think it will have that big an effect on demand, because again, the taxpayers, I mean, you said the rich, the middle class, and the upper middle class, they also have been seeing sort of, relatively flatlining incomes. Job market is not really good. Increments are not good. So I think most of the income tax cut will be saved.
Okay, so
not spent.
Okay, so also there are issues, around the meeting the fiscal deficit target.
So there I have a very clear answer. I think the fiscal deficit target should just be temporarily ignored.
Okay, so right now the focus should be to revive demand rather than...
The quickest and the only way to revive the economy is to revive demand, and the most effective short-term way to revive demand is for the government to... Some fiscal deficit losing has already happened on what were the corporate tax cuts, right? It was a fiscal boost because the government let go of revenue. Remember again, these were announced in the budget.
Right.
A big disinvestment target was announced in the budget anyway. So they're just operationalizing that. I think fiscal deficit target should be let go of right now.